Alright everyone, Cowboy Trades here, welcome back to the channel for another update on Solana. So I've noticed a very interesting fractal developing on the 4-hour time frame for Solana. While we have been forming this descending wedge for the past month, we've repeated this fractal twice and we could be repeating it for the third time. I want to talk about what does this mean for the price in the immediate short term for Solana, but before we do dive into this new fractal, I first of all want to head over to the daily time frame and start from where we left off in our previous video. 6 days ago when we were talking about the TA for Solana, when we were talking about the on-chain metrics, we identified this bear flag, and as you can see 6 days ago was right here. We broke to the downside after our video, retested the bottom trend line on the bear flag as resistance, and we have started to move down from around about $20 all the way down to as low as $18.60 following the retest of this bear flag. So if we once again identify the price target of this bear flag, it is going to be down here at $16.45. Just wanted to update you on that front on what is happening. If we do also just provide a quick update on the macro, we've been talking about this half diamond top formation, which for the past 3 to 4 weeks we have been breaking down to the downside of. And as you can also see on the weekly time frame, Solana is trading right in this red box underneath the $20 mark. This is in correlation to an area where there's not much volume in the market. So we've got our VPVRs drawn over on the left side of the screen, looking at how much volume there is in the market when you're trading in these blue boxes where there's lots of volume traded. You can see we spend lots of time trading, This was the FTX collapse, so this is why we melted through this level so quickly. But you can see we melted through this level where there was no volume. We found support at this blue box where there was a decent amount of volume traded, spent a few weeks here, once again fell into an area with not much volume, whiplash down, whiplash up. When we came into the blue box, spent 2 weeks of data traded here, no volume above it, so we rocketed above it. So basically, whenever we come into these red boxes, you just have these knee-jerk reactions extremely quick, whether it's up or down, depending on whether you're in a bull or a bear market. And obviously, like we've been highlighting, we are falling into this red box right now. So I think potentially after this fractal plays out that I am going to be talking about in a second, we might see that next move back down to the downside for Solana. Now, I'm going to leave this chart on the 4-hour time frame to talk about in just 1 second. First of all, let's dive into this fractal which has been playing out. So like I said, we've got this descending wedge which has been forming on Solana. For now, just focus on what's happening in the wedge. You can basically see, we come down, find support at the bottom of the wedge, and we form an uptrending line of support. We have a touch point, we have a touch point, we have a touch point, we break beneath it, and when we come back up for a retest, we have very, very weak retest. We don't manage to get all the way back up to it. In fact, in this example, we didn't even revert back into the golden ratio. So what I'm highlighting is you break down from the trend line, you have a solid bounce, you don't make it back up to the trend line, and then you continue breaking down. You form a new trend line, you come down, touch the trend line, touch the trend line, you fall beneath it, and just like in this previous example as well, you can see we come back for that retest and we don't quite make it up to that line. If we draw a Fibonacci from this level as well, from the bounce, you can also see, just like in the previous example, this is a really weak bounce because we don't even make it into the 0.5 Fibonacci. From this point, if we come over to the 1-hour time frame, so it's a little bit easier to see, you can see touch point, touch point, touch point, flip it as resistance. When you come back for that bounce, you don't have enough strength to make it back up to that resistance box again. So if we come back over to the 4-hour time frame again, what you can see, what do all of these bounces and retests have in common? Well, you can see after you break down, the stochastic RSI turns up on the bounce and you top off around about this 100 line. Then you proceed to follow the fractal again. You break down from the trend line, you break down, you can see this stochastic breakdown. And when it's ready to bounce and turn back up to the upside, you don't quite make it up to the trend line. When you start topping out, you see that top in the stochastic RSI once again coming up to 100. You then once again form the same trend line, you form the trend line, you break down, stochastic bottoms, you start to turn up, and the stochastic RSI hits 100 on the retest before starting to turn down to the downside. You can also see, if we do pair the EMA ribbons with this and get rid of the stochastic RSI, what you can see with all of these retests is you come into the 4-hour EMA ribbons before breaking back down. Over here, you come into the 4-hour EMA ribbons before breaking back down. And just like these two previous fractals, which have correlated with a top in the 4-hour stock and a retest of the 4-hour EMA ribbons, we are once again repeating this fractal at this moment in time, as Solana is finding itself right in the middle of the 4-hour EMA ribbons. Now, in these two previous occasions, the middle of the EMA ribbons were basically the top for the price structure. Now, does this mean that we can't push up a little bit further, potentially tagging $19.81, the top of the 4-hour EMA ribbons? No, it doesn't. This fractal, basically, as long as this doesn't, break majorly above this trend line around about $20, then we could continue to see this same kind of ebb and flow structure play out for Solana. Now, if we come back over to this chart on the 4-hour time frame and clear everything up, just to focus on what's happening with the liquidity swings on the Lux algo, we obviously don't really need an EMA ribbon or something to identify that we are obviously in a bearish trend right now. You can see that we have highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, and potentially coming up for that lower high right around now. This is why we're obviously bearish on the 4-hour EMA ribbons. What I wanted to highlight is, since we have started to form this trend to the downside, and obviously since we have started to form this massive falling wedge to the downside, we haven't really come up to the upside to fill any of these trap liquidity boxes. Now, when you are looking at the major trap liquidity, for example, when you have these wicks up, people went to big positions and there's lots of liquidity up at these spikes. You can see 2 million on this spike, 6 million on this spike. Obviously, if you're a market maker, you want to recover that liquidity swing. So typically you break back up, fill the liquidity before breaking back down. Big cluster of liquidity right here, 6 million, you break back down, you pump back up to fill it, and then obviously you break back down to the downside. But other than that, you don't really fill the liquidity swings to the upside. You've got 800,000 here, never reclaimed. 800,000 here, never reclaimed. 800,000 here, never reclaimed. 300,000 here, never reclaimed. 300,000 here, never reclaimed. But people are putting in a lot of liquidity at each drop to the downside on the liquidity swing. So if we are looking at this structure right now, you can see we had 6 million in this liquidity swing to the downside, and we broke back down and filled all of that liquidity. We had basically 2 million to the downside right here, broke back down and filled it. 3 million to the downside right here, broke back down and filled it. 2.3 million to the downside here, broke back down and filled it. And right now we are sitting, obviously we had this major wick all the way down to $18.66. This literally happened on a 4-hour candle. In fact, if we come over to the 1-hour time frame, you can see this was within 1 hour. We just absolutely wicked to the downside, and now there is tons of liquidity round about this $18.66 level. This is going to be a major interest level for market makers to push us back down to the downside of. And if we do focus on the 1-hour time frame, you can see 42,000 here, 369,000 here. These have both been filled with the most recent rally in the past, 3 hours or so. So in my opinion, based on what's happening on the hourly, the 4-hourly, everything that we've looked at with these fractals, I think Solana's coming to a point in the lower time frames now that we are beginning to top out, and we should be heading back down to the downside. Now, it's not only this big cluster down here at $18.66, which you might want to take interest in. Let's come over to the daily time frame and look at this massive cluster right down here. We've got 6.6 million worth of liquidity to the downside right here at $16. And if we come over to the weekly time frame, what have we got down here? 54.6 million. If you're a market maker, you are going to want to run it back and obviously grab that liquidity before making any sort of significant move. Now, of course, if you're in a bull run, we don't always fill every single liquidity pocket. For example, this one over here in late December of 2020, before Solana went on a massive bull run, but this liquidity pocket was only around about 29 million before we pumped it back up to the upside. This is 54.6 million. I don't think that we're just going to ignore this level and never come back down to it. Even in the event of a double bottom, market makers are going to want to push us down to at least back down to, between $10 to $8. In my personal opinion, I think we go for one last leg to the downside. If you have been watching my channel, you do know that I personally think in the immediate short term, there's going to be a lot of open interest around about this $15 region, not only because we do have a big cluster of liquidity at $16, but also if we reset this chart and run it all the way back to what we were originally looking at, you can see for for the volume profiles, there is a big area of interest right down here at $15. This is why when we had the FTX collapse all the way from $32 down to $8, you know, before we went down to $8, we spent approximately, you know, 6 weeks trading within this tight range. So there's a lot of reasons why I think we're going to come down here. Fibonacci patterns, trap liquidity down at $16, massive volume down here at $15. All in all, this is where I think Solana is moving to in the immediate short term. And if we come back over to the 4-hour time frame and look at the price target of this bear flag breakdown, it's also down here at $16.40. So in the immediate short term, this is really where I think Solana is going to be moving to. Of course, you know my thoughts on the higher time frames. Like I've been saying in the videos, Sol BTC is absolutely bleeding out right now, and Sol BTC is approximately around about 33% away from making new bear market lows, whereas if we come over to Sol USD, it's a little bit further away. It's approximately 61-62% away. Now, if you do watch my other altcoin videos, for example, quite recently we've been talking about how altcoins like Cadena were heavily underperforming their alt BTC pairs, and we've highlighted in a few different altcoins that when you have a really weak alt BTC pair but the alt USD pair isn't breaking down, it's often a sign that the alt BTC pair is going to be a leading indicator for the alt USD pair. We saw this in Cadena, where the KDA BTC pair was breaking into new bear market lows for about 2 or 3 months, and Cadena USD was holding up very well. Everyone was saying a new bull run's beginning, the bottom is in, blah blah blah, and the KDA BTC pair said no, we're coming back down to the downside, and obviously we made new bear market lows. I think the same thing is going to happen for Solana. Solana BTC is rushing to the downside, but Sol USD is still kind of chopping and deciding whether it wants to move down. I personally think we're getting ready for one of these final retests on the 4-hour time frame before we break down to the downside and have that next major move back down. Of course, we've been discussing on the channel for numerous reasons. For example, over here we've been looking at this Elliott wave theory, which is telling us that we've got one final ABC to the downside. The last time we talked about this, we were predicting about a 79.5% drop, and we've broken down about 10%, nothing major. We've still got a decent ways to go, in my opinion. I think round about $5 is going to be the bear market lows for Solana. It's a psychological price target. It would complete this final ABC in this INI 3 WXY structure. There's also a massive touch point down here at $5, $4.50. If we come back over to this original chart, I mean, if you're a veteran of the channel, I've discussed all of this in major detail before. Huge cluster of volume down here at $5. All in all, I do not think that Solana degens are going to turn down the opportunity to ape in at $5. I think from a risk to reward perspective, $5 is going to be a great opportunity to start getting back into Solana. I may start putting some buy orders down round about this $5 mark. I'm still considering it. I will let you know as you know the breakdown does develop for Solana where I will be placing my buy orders for that next macro leg down. But for today, my friends, that's all I've got. Just wanted to share, mainly focusing on what's happening on the 4-hour time frame right now. Obviously, if you have been watching all my Solana videos, we've been presenting lots of macro analysis that points towards that final leg to the downside. You know, this 4-hour fractal is just quite interesting, and this might be the final nail in the coffin before we start to roll back down to the downside. The weekly stock for Solana has a little bit further to go to the downside, and as you know, as we have been highlighting on the channel, typically when you come down into this final region, you know, the approximate average of the stochastic RSI right now, because there's 2 moving average, if we take the middle ground of both of these, we're around about 24, and as you can see, when we've previously been in these phases for Solana, this normally means that we've just started a breakdown and we've probably got about another month to go to the downside before we find that next macro leg. And as you can see in these 2 previous examples, when we're breaking down on the stock and we're around about this 24 mark, we do have some sizable corrections back down to the downside. I think this is going to be another sizable correction coming very soon for Solana. So for today, my friends, that's all I've got. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know down below by leaving a like and a comment. Share the videos with your friends. If you want to further support the channel, feel free to click the join button and become a member today. Follow me on Twitter at 618_cowboy. It's been your boy Cowboy Trades. I'm out. Peace.